All right, so now we're going to talk about Big Ten football week 3. So this is the week 3 for Big Ten football. I do this every week. I'm going to try and keep up with this every week. I've already made my Michigan video, so if you want to go watch that, I am a Michigan fan, so I make a separate video on them. I won't be talking about them in this video. Go watch my last video if you want to hear my thoughts on Michigan. After beating UConn over the weekend 59-0. We're going to talk about the rest of the Big Ten, how I feel about them, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's start at the very top with Ohio State. So Ohio State played Toledo, and they played the Fox primetime game, which I didn't really understand, but I guess who else are you going to put in there when Fox is paying billions of dollars pretty much to broadcast Big Ten games exclusively? Not exclusively, but the primetime games at least. Any game they want. They chose the Ohio State game. Ohio State wins it 77-21. It was a little bit close. It was never close. Ohio State let some points go in on 21 points, but it was mostly later in the game. Ohio State scored pretty much at will. This basically looks like the Ohio State team we're used to. C.J. Stroud had 4 touchdowns, really almost 400 yards passing. Ohio State looks really, really good on offense. They're finally starting to look a little bit better because, week 1 they beat Notre Dame. We weren't really sure how they were, if their offense was any good after that, or if they were going to be as good as we all thought they were going to be. And then last week they beat Arkansas State, but they only scored like 45 points or something, and people were just kind of like, I don't know. And it wasn't like it was super impressive. So this week, though, Ohio State wins, scores 77 points. Clearly, that offense is coming to their own and is getting better. So Ohio State wins big, no surprise there. Nebraska. I always make fun of Nebraska. There's really no reason to anymore. They fired Scott Frost. They have an interim coach now. I think his name's like Mickey something. I don't remember his name. Sorry about that, Nebraska fans. But Oklahoma beat the absolute crap out of Nebraska on Saturday, 49-14. This game was over 10 minutes in. Nebraska had zero chance. Some people thought this might have been close. Nebraska went really far in last year against Oklahoma, almost beat them, was a really close game. Oklahoma did end up pulling that game out, but not this year. Wasn't going to happen. Oklahoma defensively has gotten a lot better, so wasn't too surprised at the score. I figured, for me personally, I figured Nebraska would get blown out. If you can't beat Georgia Southern, how are you going to beat Oklahoma? Oklahoma wins it big. Nebraska's terrible. We all know this. Michigan State. Thank you very much, Michigan State. You absolute idiots over at Michigan State. Can't beat Washington. Now, listen, Washington may be a pretty good team. They scored pretty much at will when it came to passing the ball. Over 400 yards for Michael Penix, former Indiana quarterback. The reason I say I'm mad at Michigan State is mostly because they were out of all of the teams in the Big Ten East, every team is undefeated right now in the Big Ten East, except for Michigan State. They are 2-1 now. And what's funny is there is only one team in the Big Ten West that is undefeated, and that's Minnesota, and we'll talk about them later. But yeah, Washington wins. This game was pretty much never in doubt. It was 39-14 at its worst, and the Michigan State tried to come back, but it was just too late. They were down by so many points. It just wasn't going to happen. 39-28 is your final score. Peyton Thorne looked good for Michigan State. Their running backs are pretty good. There's no Kenneth Walker on the team anymore, but that secondary of Michigan State is something they really need to get fixed if they want to compete with high-level offenses. Teams like Michigan and Ohio State will absolutely have a field day with that secondary if they can't get it together. If they play like that in every game. Michigan State's got some problems. Michigan State went from 11th ranked, and now they're going to be unranked. So that leaves 3 Big Ten teams that are ranked now, and we're only in week 3. Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. Speaking of Penn State, they looked really, really good yesterday. They destroyed Auburn 41-13, or 41-12, I'm sorry, 41-12. This game was dominant. Penn State looks really, really good, really dominant. Offense looks good under Sean Clifford. Defense looks really good. Auburn, I don't think Auburn's that great of a team, but still, Penn State has been dominant in every game they've played, and they look dangerous. Definitely, other than Ohio State, Michigan's toughest team. The toughest team they're going to play. They did announce when I was at the Connecticut game on Saturday that this is going to be Michigan's maze-out game. Our night game is going to be against Penn State. It's going to be the maze-out game. So if you're going to that game, wear maze against Penn State. I think this is a great idea. This is the best way to give us the most home field advantage. I completely agree. This is the best choice in terms of who we should be going up against in a maze-out situation. Will that give us the win? Hopefully. But Penn State looks really good, really dangerous. A team that really does need to be taken seriously is Penn State. So they win 41-12. Sorry, my neck is killing me for some reason right now. Purdue. Man, Purdue. Oh, man, Purdue. Purdue. Purdon't. I was trying to think of something. I couldn't think of anything else. Losing to Syracuse, man. Now, Syracuse, to be fair, Syracuse is undefeated. Maybe they're a better team than we thought. Syracuse beats Purdue 32-29. It's just, that's embarrassing. Purdue, I thought, was better than that. I know Syracuse is undefeated, but I still didn't think that Purdue was going to lose to Syracuse. But they did, 32-29. They tried to come back from this one and couldn't get it done. Aiden O'Connell, he had 3 touchdown passes, but you should expect that when you pass the ball 55 times a game. They just throw the ball all the time. So, of course he's going to have ridiculous numbers, over 400 yards passing when you're passing the ball 55 times and completing 39 of them. So, didn't really rush the ball, although they could do that pretty well. They still lost this game. So, you know what? Didn't seem like an offensive issue. It seemed like a defensive issue here. But, yeah, I don't know what happened to Purdue. Last week and a couple weeks ago, I had Purdue going far in the Big Ten race. They still could. They haven't played a Big Ten team yet. They still could win the West. We'll see what happens to Purdue. I think Purdue's problem is that they are too inconsistent. One week they'll win a big game and look good doing it, and the next week they'll lose to a team that they shouldn't lose to, and then they look horrible. They just do that every year. They did it last year. They've done it in years prior. So I don't know about Purdue. Maybe Purdue is not the best team to predict to win the Big Ten West because they're just too inconsistent. But Purdue is also one of those teams where if I was to play them, I'd be scared of them because they can beat any Big Ten team on any given week. If you don't think so, look back at Ohio State in 2018 when they beat Ohio State, and then the following week lost to Minnesota. And Minnesota wasn't even that good that year. Maybe they were. Minnesota was better, but not as good as Ohio State. So Purdue loses. That's disappointing to see. I don't know what to say. Honestly. Oh, Northwestern. So every weekend, when I talk about these games, I've had my Big Ten loser of the week. I know I'm not really calling it that, but in week 1 it was Iowa after barely beating South Dakota State, never even scoring a touchdown. I know they won that game, so you don't need to necessarily win to make it in here. So yeah, you don't need to necessarily win to make it into my Big Ten loser of the week. But Iowa was in there week 1. Nebraska was in it last week after losing to Georgia Southern. And you know what? I could have put Nebraska in here again, but you know what? They lost to a top 10 team. No one gave them any chance of winning anyway. I thought about putting Michigan State in it until I realized that Northwestern lost to Southern Illinois. This is the same Northwestern team that beat Nebraska. So I guess by association, Nebraska looks like even bigger losers. Nebraska is just a disaster of a program, should I just say. I can't stress it enough how much of a disaster Nebraska is as a program. I mean, not only do you lose to Northwestern in embarrassing fashion in week 0 of the season, a game that everyone was watching, but then you go out, you lose to Georgia Southern, you get destroyed by Oklahoma, and then that same Northwestern team that beat you guys loses to Southern Illinois. Southern Illinois, a team that didn't have any wins going into this season. And I'm sorry, who did Southern Illinois play? The Southern Illinois Salukis? They lost to Southeastern Missouri State 34-21, and they lost to Incarnate Word 64-29. Northwestern lost to a team that lost to Incarnate Word 64-29. Do you not see how much of an issue that is? Okay, hold on. I need to look at the line for this because I have no idea. I think Northwestern, how much were they favored by? 13.5. So not as much as I would have thought. But, I'm sorry, I got something in my eye. Northwestern, you are my Big Ten loser of the week. That is absolutely embarrassing. There is no excuse for that. So I want to know. Vote in the comments if you'd like. Which team is more embarrassing in the Big Ten this year? Northwestern or Nebraska? It's up to you. But at least this week, it's Northwestern. God almighty. Southern Illinois. 31-24. Embarrassing. We already talked about Purdue. Indiana was down pretty big to Western Kentucky. Ended up coming back and winning this one in overtime, 33-30. Indiana's undefeated. They haven't looked very good doing it. But, you know, I guess in Indiana's case, a win is a win. They've already won more games this year than they've won last year. They only won 2 games last year, going 2-10. Now they're 3-0. So, I mean, they're already off to a better start, but still don't think Indiana's a very good team at all. They haven't won any game by, you know, convincingly, you know, beating Illinois by 3, beating Idaho 35-22. I mean, really? Western Kentucky 33-30. In Indiana's winning close ones and games they should be winning by more. But, yeah, Indiana beats Western Kentucky in overtime in a thriller. Good job, Indiana. Once Big Ten play starts, you're in trouble, though. Rutgers, also another embarrassing game. They did win, but beating Temple by 2 points is not necessarily impressive. Now, they are 3-0. I should give them that, and they do have one dominant win, a 66-7 win over Wagner last week, and they did beat Boston College, which I gave them credit for, was a good win, but beating Temple by 2 points, 16-14, is not necessarily like popping out to me like, wow, that's how great for Rutgers. I wouldn't have even popped if they had dominated, so Rutgers wins it on the road, 16-14 over Temple. Iowa, this Iowa game got delayed 3 times from lightning. There was a huge storm going on in Iowa City. Iowa, they just couldn't catch a break when it came to the weather. 3 rain delays. This game, with the rain delays, or the lightning delays, took 6 hours to finish. Ridiculous. They should have just called the game, honestly, but I guess they didn't want to do that. So Iowa wins this one anyway, 27-0. Defense looked dominant. They finally scored more than 7 points. So there's that. Iowa already looking better. But again, it's Nevada. But you got to take the positives over the negatives if you're an Iowa fan at this point. What has Nevada done, honestly? Nevada is also another team that lost to Incarnate Word. I guess Incarnate Word's not too bad. 55-41 losing to Incarnate Word. And then they beat Texas State and New Mexico State, which are 2 horrible programs. So they should have won those games anyway. But Iowa wins 27-0. And a game that had 3 rain delays and took over 6 hours to finish. I believe this game started at around 7:30 and didn't finish till 2:40 in the morning. I had fallen asleep before the game ended. Wow. If you're an Iowa fan and you managed to stay awake waiting for your team to play, then I salute you. Maryland. I've been giving Maryland a lot of love these last few weeks. But SMU was a close one. Playing against Southern Methodist, getting the win, though, 34-27. This was close to the very end. They were tied. I thought this game was going to go into overtime. Never ended up happening. Maryland ended up getting the score late to pull away by 7. So Maryland's got to play better than that next week because they got Michigan. And I'll talk about that next week. But yeah, Maryland wins 34-27. Talia Tagovailoa looks good. I'm sorry, it's not Talia Tagovailoa, is it? That's not Talia Tagovailoa. Hold on. I need to look at the stats here. It didn't even pull up for me. Yeah. Talia Tagovailoa looked good. 17-23, 214 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So, look good again. Offense is not really a concern when it comes to Maryland. Defense is still definitely a concern if you're Maryland, at least to me. So, Maryland gets the win here. Minnesota could be the best team in the West. I know I've been changing it every week. One week I'm saying it's Wisconsin. One week I'm saying it's Purdue. One week I'm saying it's Minnesota. I really do think Minnesota is one of the better teams in the West. Now, Wisconsin is also another team. I guess, to me, those two are the best teams right now in the West. But Wisconsin does have that one loss to Washington State. Minnesota is still unproven, but they're beating teams by a lot of points. So, Minnesota, 49-7 win over Colorado. Nice win there for Minnesota. Looked really, really good again. But Minnesota has done this before where they look really good in non-con play, but once they start playing bigger and better teams, they kind of fall apart and win 5 or 6 games, 7 games at the most. So Minnesota looks good, but we'll see how they do as the season progresses. They have Michigan State next week, so that'll definitely be a tougher challenge than any other team they've played. And Wisconsin gets a 66-7 win over New Mexico State. Again, they looked really good. Pretty much scored at will, did whatever they wanted. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Wisconsin definitely needed this win also after losing to Washington State. They needed a confidence boost because they got Ohio State next week. And that will definitely not be easy. So Wisconsin gets the win. Ohio State has, so I'm going to just kind of go over who these teams play next. Ohio State plays Wisconsin. Michigan plays Maryland, so that'll be the toughest opponent we've got next. Nebraska plays, they play Indiana next week. I believe next week. Maybe it's not next week. No, I don't think it is next week. It's on 10-1, so I think Nebraska's got a bye week next week, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. They have a bye week next week. Michigan State plays Minnesota. That should be a good one. Illinois, by the way, was the only team that didn't play this week in the Big Ten. They had a bye week. But Michigan State plays Minnesota next week. That should be a good one. Penn State has got not Northwestern. That's after the next game. Central Michigan. I mean, Penn State will absolutely demolish Central Michigan. There's no doubt about that one. Northwestern, they play Miami of Ohio. Miami of Ohio is horrible, but so is Southern Illinois. So, will it matter? Purdue plays Florida Atlantic. So they should win that one, honestly. Indiana, they play Cincinnati next week. That's going to be a tough one. I think that'll be Indiana's first loss. Cincinnati. Rutgers plays, who do they play? Iowa. So that'll maybe be a good one. Probably not. Minnesota. I do want to see who does Minnesota play now? Oh yeah, Michigan State. Duh. I was just talking about it. Wisconsin plays Ohio State, like we've already discussed. That's going to be next week. Of course, that's the primetime game. A primetime 7:30 game. Iowa, and I think I already said it. Yeah, they play Rutgers. And Maryland plays Michigan. So some good matchups next week. In week 4 for the Big Ten. Illinois plays Chattanooga on Thursday. This upcoming Thursday. So maybe it was a good thing they got that bye week before a short week against Chattanooga. They're going to win this game anyway. It doesn't matter. But the lines for these games. Michigan is favored by 17 against Maryland. Penn State favored against Central Michigan by 26. It should be 56. Michigan State and Minnesota. Minnesota's favored by 1 point. Look out for the Michigan State-Minnesota game. This could be a really good one. Indiana and Cincinnati. Cincinnati's favored by 15. Could be favored by more, honestly. Iowa's favored by 7.5 over Rutgers. We'll see. That could be a decent one. Ohio State is an 18-point favorite over Wisconsin. I kind of agree with that. That seems like a pretty good line right there. Northwestern, still given the benefit of a doubt, 6-point favorite over Miami of Ohio. And Purdue is a 19.5-point favorite over FAU, Florida Atlantic, next week. So those are next week's Big Ten games. Let's kind of just go over the top 25 here since I've got some more time. I like to keep these videos around a half hour long. Number 1 team in the land, Georgia, to beat the absolute monkey doo-doo out of South Carolina, 48-7. I think South Carolina is a decent team, so great win for Georgia. Bama beat UL Monroe 63-7. Ohio State, we already talked about. Clemson 48-20 over Louisiana Tech, so they look good. Oklahoma looks good, 49-14 over Nebraska. We already talked about that. USC, number 7 team over Fresno State. Fresno State's not a great team or anything like that, but 45-17 win. USC looks really, really good. Are they one of the best teams in the country? Are they a playoff contender? Maybe. We'll see how the season progresses and how the teams ahead of them do and how they do, or if other teams come along and look better. But USC looks really good right now. I think they're in a good position to be one of the best teams in the country. 45-17 win. Oklahoma State beat Arkansas at Pine Bluff 63-7. Kentucky with a shutout over Youngstown State 31-0. Arkansas barely beating Missouri State 38-27. That's an 11-point win. They struggled there at the end. Oregon beat the crap out of BYU, so 41-20 there. Texas A&M bounced back, 17-9 win over Miami. Utah beat San Diego State 35-7. Tennessee with a big win, not really, over Akron 63-6. NC State 27-14 over Texas Tech. Baylor with a 42-7 win over Texas State. Florida beat South Florida 31-28. Not looking good for Florida. Wake Forest only a 1-point win over Liberty 37-36. Ole Miss destroyed Georgia Tech 42-0. Texas got the win over UTSA 41-20. Penn State, we already talked about. Pittsburgh beat Western Michigan 34-13. Notre Dame is another team I want to talk about. They're not on the top 25 list because they're not ranked anymore. But Notre Dame barely beat Cal over the weekend. Notre Dame is horrible. I'm just going to say Notre Dame is not good. If there's any Notre Dame fans that want to go out there and tell me Notre Dame is good, I don't know what you're smoking. Notre Dame's offense is non-existent. I mean, I turn on TV to Notre Dame, and when it's time for Notre Dame to go out on offense, I don't see anything. I mean, it's non-existent. It's just like a bunch of dudes for the other team running around. All right, that's a bad joke. I'm sorry, but you get what I'm saying. Notre Dame is not a good team. They have a terrible, terrible offense. Notre Dame's not going anywhere this season. Barely beating Cal 24-17 is not good. Marcus Freeman finally gets his win, a win. So, I mean, there's that. And Lou Holtz hasn't lost hope in him yet. We have that. I feel like Notre Dame really just prolonged the inevitable when it came to losing the respect of Lou Holtz, Marcus Freeman. But Notre Dame, man, they've got some tough games ahead of them. I believe they play Wake Forest. They play Clemson, USC. I mean, it's just not going to be easy. If I could find their schedule, I would kind of like to talk about it, yeah. So, North Carolina, that'll be tough just because Notre Dame's offense is bad. BYU, I know they didn't look good, but Oregon's a lot better than BYU, and I'm certain Oregon's a lot better than Notre Dame as well. So BYU will be tough. Stanford, they should win that one, honestly, but who knows at this point. UNLV should also, I think that's probably their only one on there that's like a for sure win. Syracuse, I don't know, man. Syracuse, I think they'll win this one, honestly, but Notre Dame will. But Syracuse is undefeated right now, looking decent at least. Clemson, top 5 team right there. Navy, Boston College, who's not always horrible. And then USC at the end of the season. I don't know, man. I think USC is going to be one of those teams that outright embarrasses Notre Dame at the end of the season. I mean, it might be one of the worst losses in Notre Dame history. I mean, we'll see. But USC looks really good. Notre Dame does not look really good. Notre Dame's really got to fix that offense because it is horrible. So, like I was talking about before, rankings are out. Only 3 teams remain ranked in the Big Ten. Number 3, Ohio State. Number 4, Michigan are the upper echelon right now of the Big Ten. They're the top dogs in the Big Ten right now. And Penn State is another team that is getting to that point where they could be considered a big dog in the Big Ten. Being 14th ranked, I definitely think Penn State is a top 10 team, at least right now. Every other team in the Big Ten is not ranked anymore. Wisconsin lost their ranking. Michigan State lost their ranking yesterday. I mean, the Big Ten had a lot of ranked teams at the beginning of the season, and now there's only 3 left. So, and they're the best ones. So, I don't know, man. I wish more Big Ten teams were ranked, but mostly just because Michigan doesn't play another ranked opponent until October 15th against Penn State at home, and then they play they play Ohio State after that at the end of the season, last game of the season. And other than that, we don't play another ranked opponent because we got Maryland, we got Iowa, Michigan State's not ranked anymore, Illinois, Nebraska. I mean, a lot of games we should win. So, but yeah, that's pretty much my video. It's a few minutes shorter than usually is. But yeah, this is my Big Ten discussion video. This is my favorite video to make, where I can just sit here and talk about football for 30 to 35 minutes. So this is going to be basically just my daily, or my weekly, I should say, not daily. I couldn't do this daily. I have a daytime job, so weekends are the best time to do this. But this is my favorite video to make of the week, where I can just sit and talk about college football. So if you guys want to see these every week, I definitely want to keep up with them and keep doing them every week. At least try to. Even when Michigan loses, I want to try and do it, even though I probably won't be in the mood for it. So Michigan, the Michigan video is the video I talked about in the last video, so go watch that one if you want to hear my thoughts on Michigan, because I don't talk about them in this video. They have their own separate video because I am a Michigan fan. So yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to say about college football week 3. We got some big games that are possibly happening next week. I don't know if there's any like big time games next week. Georgia plays Kent State. Clemson and Wake Forest could be good. Ohio State, Wisconsin should be, hopefully a good one. I really hope Wisconsin wins. Who does Bama play? They play Vanderbilt, so that'll be a win for sure. 40-point favorite over Vanderbilt, and Georgia is a 42-point favorite over Kent State. So yeah, that is the weekly discussion. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe. Go watch my Michigan video. I went to the Michigan game over the weekend, so if you want to see some footage I took of the game, it's not very long, so it's only, it'll only take a few minutes of your time if you want to look at it. It was a pretty cool experience. My first football game for Michigan. First time being at the big house for a football game. I've been to plenty of spring practices before, but never to a full game. So go and watch that if you'd like. Subscribe, like, and I'll see you guys in the next video.